Now, I will not be recognizing the questioners. John will do that, but please wait till John appears by your side with a microphone and identify yourself and ask a question.
Good morning. Steve Welsmock, Reality News. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your presentations. They're all excellent. Dr. Goklany, that last presentation was absolutely terrific, and I think your focus is just exactly right on. This type of information is the kind of thing that's being ignored, and this is the truth. And frankly, I would encourage you to take this, and I'd be more than happy to help you in any way I could, and get this into a book, because this is exactly where we need to go, because this is the truth of how fossil fuels have helped us on all parts of it, especially environmentally. And your work is just tremendous here. I just wanted to make that comment because I'm just really impressed.
Thank you very much.
My name's Clint Laird. I'm with the Caesar Rodney Institute, an SPN member in Delaware. My question is to Steve. Steve, is there, in your presentation, you've commented about the public relations value for companies to get on board with the green agenda. My question is there any, I think I got that right, perhaps it was...
Well, actually I do that in my new book, but I don't know, maybe we were talking about it earlier. Absolutely tremendous pressures on companies to be green.
Correct. So my question is there any company or has there been any caving? Is there an example where that worked against a company and they said, no, we're not going to buy that product because you say it's green, we don't think it is?
Except for my personal experience, I rebel when somebody says it's green this or green that. But there's tremendous pressure on companies, everything from trying to do the right thing, not understanding the real environmental science, boycotts from green groups, suppliers. T.J. Rogers wrote the foreword for my next book. He was the founder of Cypress Semiconductor. He sells ICs to Apple. He's got to be a green company. Apple will not accept ICs unless you're a green company. So there are tremendous pressures on business today to be green. And there's a public relations value. The public expects it. You can sell green products for a higher price than regular products. So there are tremendous marketing issues. But when I go talk to groups, I say, the one thing you need to realize is that all these measures do effectively zero for the environment. So realize this ought to be in your public relations department. That's the place it belongs.
I would like to respond a little bit. There has been some companies, if you'd like to contact me later, I can get you some names, that have said they've gone green and have suffered backlash when it turned out, in fact, they hadn't gone that green. Chipotle is a prominent one, said we're not going to use GMO foods, and it turns out, well, what we mean is about 30% of our foods won't be GMO.
They found it's in everything.
Yeah, that was the problem. They found it's in everything. How do you make tortillas if you're using corn, if you can't use GMO corn? So there are instances.
Dr. Goklany, over here.
Okay. Sorry.
George Mears, Suffolk, Virginia. I believe it was IPPC 6. They had or non-governmental, Conference 6. There was an Indian researcher. I think he was a doctor, and he basically had statistics that were of the usable kind, talking about the losses of food crops due to lack of transportation in India, and talking about the tragic numbers of deaths due to snake bites because there was no serum, because they only had a power a couple hours a day, and so there was no refrigeration, that sort of things. Have those kind of anecdotal things been compiled and brought up to date to where we are now? Because that's, if you can start making I thought that was a very powerful case for, the liberal mindset of let them use a couple of solar cells and keep everybody in poverty. And I mean, those were just dramatic statistics. And we've already gone through the process once of bringing them to light. Are we maintaining that, or is Heartland maintaining that, or is anybody maintaining that?
I think there might be some people who are kind of keeping track on that, but these days, you can, essentially if you want to find something out, you just Google it, okay? I just Googled, I think the other day I Googled snake bites in India, and the number, I don't remember, I think it was like 25,000. people die from snake bites in India. I found that really high, and I'm not sure that I totally believe that number, but because 25,000 seems like a heck of a lot.
That's considerably less than it was 6 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was born and bred in India. I came, here when I was 23 years old, and we used to have cobras all the time. You just had to use a little bit of caution, that's all. and you would get it's known as adaptation.
If I could add something about India that supports...
And actually, I almost shared a bathroom with a cobra once.
If I could support Dr. Goklany's information about agriculture, Paul Ehrlich said in the 1960s that India could never feed 400 million people. At that time, they had 300 million. Today, there's more than 1 billion people in India. In the 1960s, they were importing food every year. Their population has tripled, but their GNP is up by a factor of 10, and now they are exporting grains. And they're only using 3% more land, and all that is, that you can attribute that to modern farming techniques, including hydrocarbons.
Straight back in the middle.
And Norman Borlaug.
Norman Borlaug. Yeah.
Hi, Adam Wildavsky. I have questions for Dr. Goreham on the power plants. You said that a solar plant over its lifetime produces less energy than was required to build it in the first place. So if I understand correctly, that means this plant is creating CO2 more than if it had never been built in the first place.
Well,
now, if I tell my environmentalist friends, they're going to tell me, oh yes, but the new generation of solar cells, sorry, I'm in the middle here.
Okay.
The new generation of solar cells is so much more efficient. So, I'm wondering if that's the case, and also how much a rational power plant, what's its energy balance in terms of input and output over its lifetime?
Yeah, thanks for the promotion. I'm actually not a doctor, but yeah, the energy recovered over energy invested analysis is very interesting, and when you look at all the costs, the ER over EI for solar is right about 1 or 2. A coal-fired power plant or a gas plant is about 10 to 15. You get 10 or 15 times the energy out as you put in. So it really is remarkable. As I think Albert Einstein said, what was his quote? Only 2 things are infinite. One is the universe, and the other is human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the universe, is what he said.
This will be the last question.
I had a question on this side. I had a question about fossil fuels. It would seem to me that electric cars make a lot of sense, primarily because they save fossil fuels for use in airplanes later. We don't have, even theoretically, another way to make an airplane work except for fossil fuels because it has to carry its fuel with it. Do you have a comment about maybe electric cars do make sense because they're at least on the ground and we can regenerate here?
Well, again,
go ahead, far away.
the thing with electric cars is they have to be recharged somewhere. And if it's all going to be based on non-fossil fuels, wind and solar, you're going to have to blanket even more of the country. You can't build an electric car without fossil fuels. You can't run a factory just on wind and solar without all the backups, or even with the backups. And the raw materials going in have to be extracted from many sources, again, using fossil fuels. You get very short mileage, even shorter if you turn on your heater or air conditioning. And I think you have to recognize that we do have a lot more fossil fuels than we have been led to believe we have.
Absolutely.
The key thing is, as I said in my talk, innovation is going to come forward at some unexpected point with something completely revolutionary that nobody ever thought of before, similar to horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing that came in under the radar, and all of a sudden here it is making this enormous impact. Same with the Hearthstone House in Wisconsin. So I have a tremendous faith in what Julian Simon called our ultimate resource, our creative intellect. And I don't think we need to be focusing on electric cars with all the problems that they have on all the levels I just mentioned.
Absolutely. The idea that we have to save hydrocarbon fuels for aircraft, that comes out of the philosophy that we're running out. We have centuries of hydrocarbons remaining. There's methane hydrates. I mean, there's just unbelievable amounts that are not yet tapped. So that we don't need to do that at this point.
You know, the electric cars have been our future for the last 110 years.
Yeah, true. That's
We
right.
just haven't gotten here yet. The fact of the matter is,
Just
I'm an
around the
electrical
corner.
engineer, did solid state physics. I have great faith that one of these days we will have solar that is really efficient. But we aren't there yet. Until we get there, don't subsidize these crazy things. You know, and you just have to wait and see how technology unfolds. But don't push it because you'd like it to happen. It ain't happening yet. It hasn't happened for 110 years, and it might happen. And there is no shortage of hydrocarbons. We have got coal. You can gasify. The Germans taught us that using the Fischer-Tropsch process, etc. These are ancient processes, and you can make gasoline out of that. And if you can make gasoline, you can make the other stuff too. There's no shortage.
Let me throw in one more point, and that is that the lithium and other materials needed for those batteries comes from places where there are no environmental or health controls, including Democratic Republic of Congo and China, and the people in those areas suffer tremendously. DRC, you have children down in those mines digging out the lithium ores, and this is never covered in any of the environmental literature that talks about how important shifting over to electricity, battery-powered everything's, how important it is to do that. They just ignore the human rights and health and environmental consequences because they're happening in somebody else's backyard.
Has anyone here ever been to the Badlands of South Dakota before, besides myself? Where these mines take place, it looks like a moonscape in the Badlands. Well, it looks like the same thing or worse where these mines for battery powers and rare earth mines take place. In any case, thank you all for attending. Let's give our speakers one final round of applause.